Hey everyone, it's Heather Nichols, and today I have two card designs to share with you that I created with the Bee's Knees card making kit. Let's take a look at what's included in the Bee's Knees kit. It comes in a vinyl zipper pouch with a sticker label on the outside. The kit centers around the Bee's Knees stamp and stencil combo set. There's a red rubber background stamp along with 3 coordinating stencils that you'll use to create the bumblebees. The Bee's Knees die collection includes 2 dies to cut out the bumblebees, the Honeycomb cluster die, the Clearly Crafty What's the Buzz stamp set, and then all of our kits include 6 envelopes and coordinating envelope seals. The envelopes in this kit are honey, sugar cube, and Oreo. Other supplies that I used for this project: Oreo, sugar cube, honey, and saltwater taffy ink, blender brushes, Happy Medium iridescent glitter and my Nuvo media spatula, pixie spray for holding stencils in place, the smallest die from the Stitched Banner Stacklets die collection, Copic opaque white ink, chocolate truffle liquid watercolor and a water brush for splattering, and finally multi-medium matte and foam squares. We'll start things off by stamping and stenciling the bumblebees. I'm doing the background stamp first, and I'll set this up in my MISTI. I'll close the lid of the MISTI to pick up the stamp, and then I'm adding some adhesive to my MISTI to hold my cardstock in place. I'm stamping this background stamp with Oreo ink onto both sugar cube and toffee cardstock. Next, I'll do the stenciling. I'm using pixie spray to hold all of my stencils in place. I just spray a thin coat on the back of the stencil. The first stencil I am doing is the bumblebee bodies, and I lined this right up over the stamped bumblebee stripes, and then I used my blender brush with honey ink to apply the color through the stencil. The next stencil is the bumblebee eyes that I'm using, and you might wonder why the eyes weren't a part of the stamp. The reason being that a lot of times when you blend yellow toned inks over black, there could be smearing, and so we wanted to avoid that and added the stencil to add the eyes afterwards. The last stencil that I'm doing is the wings, and I'm stenciling these with saltwater taffy ink. And then after I stenciled the color, I added a layer of the Happy Medium iridescent glitter over the top using my Nuvo media spatula. I'll let that panel with the iridescent glitter on it dry for a good hour. And in the meantime, I finished the bumblebees on the toffee cardstock. I stenciled the bodies again with honey ink and added the eyes with Oreo ink. And then for the wings on the toffee cardstock, I used sugar cube ink. I added splatters to the panels of bumblebees that I did on toffee cardstock, and as you can see, I did a couple of these panels. I picked up Copic opaque white ink with my water brush and tapped it over my finger to add the splatters to the panels, and I did the same with chocolate truffle liquid watercolor. I cut out the honeycomb cluster die from honey cardstock using my die cut machine. This cuts out a honeycomb outline design along with lots of little hexagons. Once the Happy Medium iridescent glitter was dry, I cut out the bumblebees that I did on the sugar cube cardstock. I cut the cardstock apart with my scissors so I could use my Sidekick machine and cut the bumblebees out with the Bee's Knees dies. Okay, let's put this first card design together using the bees on the toffee cardstock. I'm taking the honeycomb cluster die cut and adding liquid adhesive to the back of it, and then I'm going to cut it in half and attach half to each of the cards. The honeycomb outline on the bees is a little bit too busy, and so I filled in all of the openings on the honeycomb cluster with the little tiny hexagons. This creates the perfect area on the cards to add the sentiment. I'm stamping the Sweet as Can Be and Be Happy sentiments from the What's the Buzz stamp set. I'm stamping those on sugar cube cardstock with Oreo ink, and you can see that I have my foam insert in my MISTI to raise it up for the clear stamps. I cut out both of the sentiments using the smallest die in the Stitched Banner Stacklets die collection. I lined the die up around the sentiment, held it in place with Scotch removable tape, and sent it through my Sidekick machine to cut it out. Arranged the sentiment along with a few of the die-cut bumblebees over the honeycomb clusters that I added to the card panels. The sentiments are adhered directly to the card panels, and the bumblebees are popped up a little bit with foam squares. I added each of the card panels to a honey card base using foam squares to pop them up just a little bit. And that finishes up my first card design. For the second card design, I created the background on panels of honey cardstock. I added the honeycomb cluster die cut to each of the backgrounds with liquid adhesive. I cut the honeycomb cluster in half just like I did for the first card design, but instead I used both pieces on the background, one on the top and one on the bottom. I added the background into my MISTI to build the scene on my card. I'm taking the little loop-de-loop image from the What's the Buzz stamp set and I'm stamping that with sugar cube ink. Then I set the little bumblebee into the scene and added the flower images where I want to stamp them on the panel. I want the little bumblebee to look like he's flying and the little flowers are kind of scattering off behind him. The flowers are also stamped with sugar cube ink. I added splatters to the background panels just like I showed earlier in the video. And then I added the panels back into my MISTI so I could keep working on my card design. I have a few little bumblebees added to the layout so I can decide where my sentiments are going to be stamped. The main sentiment on this card is What's the Buzz from the What's the Buzz stamp set, and then I also used the little buzzword to add around the little bees. I used foam squares to adhere the bumblebees to the background, and you'll notice I decided I did not like where one of the little buzzwords was stamped, so I actually adhered the little bee right over it and re-stamped that buzz in a better place. I stamped the sentiments and added the bees in the same way to the second background panel, the only difference being that I used the Just Because sentiment instead. I added both of these panels to Taffy card bases using foam squares to pop them up just a bit. That finishes up the second card design, and here is a closer look at all of the cards that I created today in the video. I hope you enjoyed learning how I created these projects with the Bee's Knees card making kit, and I hope you're inspired to create cute bumblebee projects of your own. The Bee's Knees card making kit and the other supplies that I use to create my projects can be found in the Tailored Expressions web store at tailoredexpressions.com. Thanks so much for joining me, everybody, and I'll see you next time.